we're live, folks. Back again. This is your host of Lit Literature, JP, aka The Demon, and we are here finally to discuss Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. Super pumped. We've got some of the crew here, and believe it or not, the rest of the extended crew who's not joining us today is actually been reading it, so we might get them to chime in at different books, different maybe book 2 or 3, potentially the next series, and or some of the short stories that are all related and bridge the gaps between the series. So it should be really fun. But for today, we'll go around the half circle here and get some introductions.
You guys want to take a Brett bet on the fact if it's just us four for the entire series?
That actually would be pretty funny, yeah.
I think Andrew will jump in.
I know he definitely wants to.
Mm-hmm. What do we?
Johnny too.
Yeah. Well, let's do this. Let's make the Brett bet. How many people actually end up joining individual? So you 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
So 0, 1, 2, or 3. Because we could potentially have Andrew, John, and
Manny could, and we might even have some guest appearances.
Billy's reading it too.
Billy and
okay,
some others. So
I say 1. One person will make an appearance.
Okay.
I'm gonna say throughout the series, the arc of the series, we'll have 4 more people.
Okay, and this is all 6. This is
all 6?
Not just this
Plus
trilogy.
short stories.
Right.
Okay.
Plus the short stories.
Plus the short stories.
Never mind. I say 2.
Okay.
I changed my answer. For this trilogy, 0.
That's what I thought. That's what was my thought. 0 or 1 for
And
this trilogy.
1 for the other books.
For the rest of them? Okay. You want to do a 3 books and the whole thing?
Yeah, okay. So I say 1 person for this trilogy. For the whole thing, 2 people.
Jeff?
I bet because it's...
Wait, I'm doing 2 different, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For this trilogy, I'm gonna say 2, and for the whole thing, I'm gonna keep my 4.
Okay.
The optimist.
Yeah.
For this trilogy, I'm going to say 2, and for the whole thing, also 2.
Okay.
Those same 2
Okay.
people
We'll just join in.
will join in,
Okay.
maybe.
I feel so negative.
Actually, no, I'm going to change that. For this trilogy, 2, and then for the whole... No, yeah, 2. Never mind.
Oh, okay.
2.
Okay.
2. Andrew, and I'm going to even go one step further and say it's going to be Andrew and Manny.
But that doesn't count for the Brett bet, but if you get it right, it's like bonus points.
Bonus bragging
Yeah.
rights.
I realized that I didn't bring my charger down for my computer, so I might have to go get that at some
Grab it.
point. Yeah.
I mean, like...
Before I grab it, what I'll do is I'll pose a question, and then I'll go skitter off up to the...
Well, you could just do a quick edit.
Oh, that's true. I
Yeah,
can
let's just
do
pause
that.
it.
Wait, we have to do the Randall Flag clap then.
Okay.
But Brett, I'll give you the honors because you did the Randall Flag.
Okay.
The Randall Flag.
When we come back, the computer will be plugged in. And...
Thank you, Randall Flag.
Charger.
Not only did you get the charger, but you refilled my whiskey. I love Randall Flag. Okay.
We do need to do introductions.
Oh, you didn't do that yet. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So, I am Brett, the director.
We got Josh the Chariot.
I've been the Hitman.
All right, cool. That's the crew for today. So, like we mentioned, we are talking about Mistborn, and the one thing is, I think this is Brett's first time.
Yep.
Book 1, yes, Mistborn. A Hero of the Ages? What's book 1 called? No, Hero of the Ages, book 3.
It is.
Oh, it's just Mistborn. sorry. It's a Mistborn trilogy, but it's just Mistborn. I always forget because the other Well of Ascension and Hero of Ages and Well of Ascension I think are 2 and 3. Anyway,
I also think it's called the Final Empire.
oh maybe.
Yeah, I
maybe.
think so. That's what it's in my
Because I think I got
audiobook thing is.
a thing to change later.
This is the Final Empire then, maybe?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
point is, we're dumb and we don't know. We should, but we don't.
We don't know the name of the book, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway,
But we read it.
yeah. So
Yeah, the Final Empire.
Brett, first time reader. I've read it, but it's been a long time. You did
It's
as
been
well.
almost 10 years.
And how about you?
I read half of it almost 10 years ago.
Half of book 1
Yeah.
or half of the series?
Book 1.
Okay, so this is in essence like
Wait, this
Ben's
is your first time?
Yeah.
Basically.
Oh, okay.
So we got to be cautious. But
Yes.
although the thing is that Josh and I were talking and we realized we don't freaking remember shit.
Yes.
We're like, but we don't want like certain tidbits to come out by accident anyway.
Yeah.
So just for the spoiler warning, you should only have to worry about book 1 in this episode, which will probably be at least a 2-parter, my guess.
Yeah.
But regardless, just be wary. Make sure you've read the book. I think we'll try to stick to linear progression, but if we go off, we go off. That's just how it goes.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I remember, and then I'll throw it up to you guys, initial thoughts. My initial thoughts were, I forgot how goddamn good this book was, because I remember reading it after Stormlight my first time, and I'm like, man, is this book good? But it's not at the same tier as Stormlight.
Yeah.
However, I realized rereading it this time, I'm like, but there's so many good storyline tidbits, like just hidden things, the way that it starts, the build up. I mean, it's just, I forgot how awesome the story was.
Yeah.
One thing that I always think when I kind of come back to this, especially in comparison to some of his newer books, Stormlight Archive and even like Warbreaker, is this one feels almost like so muted. It feels in terms of the colors. So like all the other books are like super vibrant and there's like these beautiful worlds and stuff. Whereas like when I think of this one, I think like this almost like as kind of how they filmed the most recent Witcher series.
Yeah.
Like it's a dark, grungy, almost like
covered in
ash and
ash.
soot,
Yeah.
and just how muted everything looks, and it's got its own kind of like visual sensation that when I'm kind of reading the book, that I'm just picturing like this super dark, like
not
everything, and it really sets a cool mood for the book.
Not only that, but like another reason you're probably getting that impression is because this is, I think, the first magic system we've come across that isn't based off of color. Right?
Well,
Or have a color impact. I mean,
Stormlight doesn't, but it has
But
to
it's
do with the
lights.
spren, and so therefore it does. It is like Stormlight.
It still has, like,
essentially.
yeah,
something
like-
with that, right?
And then, but like also, yeah, the Stormlight. Like every time they talk about Stormlight, I imagine like this glowing, like
They do glow,
pulsing
yeah,
stuff, you know.
yeah.
And then in what you call it, Elantris or whatever. What was
No,
the one?
Warbreaker.
Warbreaker. There was like a
It
ton
is
of
all
color,
colored,
breathing
you know.
the colors.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Where this
one
one's like metal,
is
and when you think of
so
metal, you
unique.
think of just like muted,
Yeah.
you know, and then like you said, ashy. But yeah, I really liked this series. You can definitely tell that it's not as like, I feel like one of the things that I really, really love about Stormlight is how often Sanderson goes to exploring the gray areas of things that people think are crystal clear, but aren't, you know? Whereas this, I feel like, is a little bit more straightforward. But other than that, and the dialogue also doesn't seem to be quite as on point as Stormlight. I think those are two areas that he developed a lot going into Stormlight. But the writing is still like better than almost anything.
You know,
I've
that's a
ever
great
read.
point. I do agree with your statement on the dialogue.
Yeah.
He got, I mean, not to say that every writer is going to get better at their craft, and the dialogue's not bad.
Yeah, it's
But
not bad.
compared to Stormlight level of dialogue,
Yeah.
he's really like ironed that out.
Yeah.
But still. Oh, Siri.
But you really see a lot of foreshadowing in this book, because I ended up reading it twice, because we were supposed to do it before this whole COVID thing, so it was like 3 months ago, 4 months ago. And reading it the second time, I could see that, I want to say Kaladin, but that's not right.
Kelsier?
Kelsier?
Yeah.
Like, he was planning the whole thing from the beginning about him dying and setting up his whole religion to empower the
Scott people.
Scott people, yeah.
Yeah, and I think like one thing, again, this being my second read through, kind of knowing what happens at the end, those little excerpts at the beginning, which I love, being able to see the old hero of Legends, like that guy's going through his progression, so you get these little tidbits and you're like, oh, they're alluding to this, and I kind of get this feeling with this. So I thought that was really awesome.
The coolest thing about this series that I'm super excited about is that we're going to get to, for the first time ever, for me, in a sequence, go through the first trilogy arc, some of the short stories, and then that bridge the gap, and then the next trilogy arc. The next trilogy is actually 4 books because it includes a bridge book, and then we'll be waiting as a team together for the final trilogy.
Yeah.
There's going to be 3 more?
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
confirmed? Ooh,
Yeah,
awesome.
And I, by the way, loved the next trilogy, like more than this original one.
I haven't read
quite
it.
a bit. So I love them all, but it's really fun to get that, and so we're gonna get to go through that and see a lot of that shifts. This book, the straightforward thing you mentioned, I feel like it almost is designed that way until the very end, when you get a big question mark, and we'll talk about that, I think, at the very end. But the statement that worries me is the Lord Ruler, when he's like, "You don't understand what I've done."
Yeah.
What I do, not what I've done.
No, what I do for
you.
you people. and then it just like ends, and you're minus the epilogue, which you're just kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
what did we just do?
Yeah.
You know, but I'm curious about that.
I'll also say, though, that I don't think there's any dictator in the history of all existence that thought, you know what? I'm going to be a bad guy.
Yeah.
You know,
That's what
they all
they-
think they're doing the right thing for
They
some
just
reason or
believe.
another. You know?
Exactly. They justify they believe it. And
Yeah.
it was interesting reading the journal entries because I was starting to wonder, and I think it's designed this way, you're starting to wonder, is the hero of ages really turned into this guy?
Yeah.
And the journal entries even get darker and darker as you go because of the level
Well, he
of responsibility.
questions so much at
yeah,
that.
level
More
of
and more.
responsibility too. Though he's like, you know, I if I ever get to the point where I can't feel a child's pain anymore, then I'm gone.
Yeah.
and
One of-
he's talking about how he kills people anyway because he has to.
Well,
and all
one of
that
my
stuff.
favorite excerpts, and I forget, somewhere roughly around the middle, where he puts an entry in there about like, oh, some of like. I hate some of the progression that I've done because some of this has had to have been done through fear. Like there are
Yeah.
places where, and you know what I immediately thought to was Wheel of Time and how there are cases where the hero, and this is probably in every single one, where the hero has to resort to like force or like I have to do this and results to some bad things. And that actually was one of the things that really was like, this is like this
Yeah.
guy turned bad. Like
Yeah.
and you think about it, like he's immortal, like
Yeah, it's been
thousands of
1,000
years.
years.
How long that can really have a toll on you?
Change
And-
your total perception of the world at 1,000 years old.
Like, and the thing too is when you start to live like that long, like years to you become nothing. Like, what do you remember when you have a 1,000-year memory? What do you remember the last year? It's kind of like when you're a kid, time feels like an hour for you, feels like
Yep.
such a long time.
Yeah.
When you're an adult, it's like, oh, a week went by. Like, oh god, we're already in June. Like,
Yeah.
it feels like time goes faster. And imagine once you get to that millennia, like 1,000 years
you
old.
blink, you're like, wasn't that 100 years
Well,
ago?
It's like, what's his name? Tom Bombadil or whatever
Yeah,
his
yeah,
name is.
Tom
It's like,
Bombadil.
oh, this is going to go by so quick. There's no point in me helping. It's going to be over by the time I blink
Yeah.
my eyes.
Well,
you know?
and that's
Yeah.
and you start to think about what does a human life mean to someone who's been like that long when you've literally been alive through millions of people's lives, and all of a sudden it's just like, okay, we have these like insanely powerful Inquisitors. Like, what does this guy matter? He's gonna be gone like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just they're. Why do I even remember it? And same thing about the
perspective
people
changes,
too.
yeah.
Like, I think I would have trouble thinking of anyone going millennia and still being able to rise up after like thousands of years and be like, oh, I care about these little people, like
Yeah.
the general masses.
I agree. It's almost like a responsibility to not be an immortal ruler.
Yeah.
Like you have to be like, I'm gonna go off into the boons now because
Oh, yeah. Well,
otherwise
That's
you
why
just don't
America
care.
was set up as it
Exactly,
is. They know
exactly.
that it's not a good idea to have anybody in power for too long,
Yep.
even if they have good intentions,
Yep.
even if they're a great leader.
Yep.
You don't know what
Perspective
time
changes.
and all that
Yeah.
power will do to somebody, you know?
Yeah.
But anyway, for divulging from the end, kind of the last comment, which just because I thought the director's comment was kind of cool and it opened up to what I wonder what we're gonna get
Yeah.
next.
And the main thing I meant by that comment, though, is just I thought it was interesting that I thought, because of how Sanderson is in Stormlight Archive, that he was going to explore the idea of, not to get to the end right away, we can talk about this more later, but that comment was mostly based off of the fact that I thought it was interesting that it wasn't the same guy at the end,
Yeah.
and that it was a different person that maybe wasn't so, like, human and righteous and questioning himself, that maybe this guy was a little bit more corrupt from the beginning. Whereas I feel like in other Sanderson books, he would have actually had this guy who seems like a good guy in these writings
Yeah.
slowly become corrupt,
Yes.
you know?
And I was actually I knew when I read this, since I'd read it previously, but I was actually leaning towards, man, I would have liked it to have been him.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially when you're getting those little tidbits of dialogue being like, I don't know, will I be able to take this power and handle responsibility? And I think I would have loved to see that, like, that, hey, you could have this amazing hero who still maybe did, I mean, obviously the deepness is gone, so something happened.
Held at bay.
Held at bay, like something's happening to it. So he succeeded, but that doesn't still mean that he's going to do everything right. And even now, we don't know exactly what he was doing. Maybe the deepness has something to do with the Ska people, and the reason he's keeping them kind of beaten down, because if they do rise up, then there's something else that could happen. There's tons of these like thought processes, and there's like, I would have actually really liked it if it did stay as the hero.
I would agree with you, excepting that I love the back of the book, and the reason for that is the entire thought experiment that led to this book was, what if the hero failed? What if he didn't do it?
I think that thought experiment could still exist in a corruption thing because, like, he sets out to be, like, this righteous person that's going to make things different and better.
Yeah.
And then the realities of actually being in charge of so many people that all have different perspectives and different ideas and different...
broke him.
Broke him. Because, and I think that would count as a failure also, sorry.
Yeah. I agree with Brett. When I read the back of the book, my whole thought was that was the hero of legends.
Yeah.
And he failed because he was tempted by the power and became corrupt. He couldn't live up to being a hero.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it more practically, like when I read the back of the book.
Straight up fails.
I thought straight up failed, and then this is the world ruled by the Empire.
Yeah.
Like the Empire. Like I was thinking like Luke Skywalker fucked up.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Palpatine just kept running the universe, and that's what we had. And so when I was thinking about it, I was like, oh my god, I bet the Lord Emperor is literally like...
Now, also, just to be clear, really quick, is... I don't think necessarily the one that I said before would have been better.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I totally do. And
I'm happy with the decision Sanderson made, and it's going to fit the story he's envisioned. It's not my job to rewrite them.
And I also have to add that, like, this being a second read-through, like, the first read-through, that reveal where it's just like,
my God.
Holy crap, like, that is such an amazing twist and, like, a really good, like, reveal. So it was a bit more muted this time since I already knew at the end, but still, like, maybe that's why I'm leaning towards, like, it would have been cool if it stayed him, but still, that reveal where she's just, like, broken, lying there, and she's like, Rashik? And he's like, turns like, what did you just say? Like, and you start to, things kind of go through. Like, he hated him.
Dude, I loved it because, like, she's confused that you got this 11 metal, 11th metal, and she, like, tries to burn it, and she's like, what the hell? Like, there's just some guy standing next to him. Some guy with a beard. What the hell? And, like, it didn't make sense, but because it's the opposite of...
Gold.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's something, too, is we still don't know what the opposite of the atrium is. And I think that's...
Well, I thought it's so interesting because you would almost think that atrium, making you, like, briefly see the future, the opposite you would think would... Oh, no, it does, right? Gold is the opposite of atrium.
Gold,
that's what they
said, but gold is the opposite of the 11th metal.
Yeah.
And atrium, what I think is there's always an external and an internal. So I think atrium is the external that lets you see the future. Yeah. And I bet you the internal is you get to control your own aging, which is going to be, we'll find out, is how he was able to store up the elements.
But that was just because of the ferrochemy.
No, but the ferrochemy, all that can do is he can store his younger life.
Yeah.
But he has to burn something.
He burns that metal he stored it in.
But he burns the metal that he stored his age in.
We know that, but we don't know what it is.
But we don't know what that metal is, because that metal could be that
maybe
opposite
it is
of atrium.
The opposite.
Because you think, where was all the atrium going? Because apparently there was supposed to be this giant stockpile, but couldn't find it anywhere.
It's got to be. You're right, because it's
always burning it.
It's always a pure metal
and then an alloy. Exactly,
yeah.
A mixture. So I bet you that mixture is something that helps you control your age. So I bet what he was doing is he's making himself young making himself really old and storing it in the
room.
Metal.
Right, in the room. He goes, that's his old man room.
Yep. Yeah. He stores it in the metal, the alloy of atrium, and then he burns that slowly throughout the day to keep his younger age.
Dude, great point. I totally forgot about this stuff. Like, even at the end of the book, I'm like... Wait a second.
How does it work?
But we don't have that as we don't know for certain. I think they said that he was making himself younger and then he was storing it and he was burning it, but we never really got that idea of what is the metal that he's burning.
Yeah, what did describe to me again? I remember the chapter, I zipped through the chapter where Vin first burns gold. Mm-hmm. What does gold do again?
Gold makes her see another version of herself. She would have been different.
She made a different choice. That's
exactly.
Right. And then gold and it's like meridium, I think they called it.
The 11th metal.
Gold alloyed with atrium lets you see the past.
Mm-hmm. Well, it lets you see other people's potential Like, if other people made a different decision...
Yeah.
Wait, no, was the 11th metal gold and...
No, the
Rhodium?
11th...
We don't think it was.
Well, it was a new metal then.
It was a new metal.
Or was
That's
it
the one
an
that
alloy?
Kelsier had?
I can't remember now.
He had a brick... He had, like, a brick of it. So it could have been... I mean, you could still have an alloy that's a brick, but he had this 11th metal.
Got it. So we don't know if it was the alloy version or the pure version.
Correct.
We know that
would-
Atium's a pure version.
Yeah.
No, we would think it's got to be an alloy because gold is a pure version.
But we
And
don't.
gold is the one
You're
that
right.
when you eat it, like, lets you see an alter version of yourself. So it's the internal of the two metal pair. The external of the two metal pair is the one that lets you see
True
someone
past.
else.
And that's the 11th metal, though.
Yep, and that's the 11th metal, which is going to be probably an alloy of gold and something.
Something else.
Yeah, and then Atrium, we don't know what the.
Yeah, and
second is.
Atrium's
And that-
probably
and
the
that's
pure, and Atium probably has an alloy. And that's
that
what we
he's
think
using
he's using to make himself.
Okay.
I bet you.
So he's combining, he's storing, like Sazed can do. Like
Sazed.
they store Sazed.
Sazed.
Sazed is how they say it.
Oh, I thought it was Sazed.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sazed? Hey, dude, you're so Sazed. Sazed, he's storing all of the like that. What a cool ability, by the way.
It seems better than elements. He said it's like not quite, but I think that's such a cool, like, they can take anything almost, right? And store it in a metal.
But anything, but that. Well, no. Each metal can store
An
something
attribute.
specific, like an attribute.
Yeah.
So, like, not anything, but like it seems like there's enough metals that you could store most of anything that you
Yeah,
want to
because he
store.
does memory, he does eyesight, they do strength, they do age, they do
Speed.
speed,
Yeah.
weight. And weight was a really cool like one that would be like, oh my god. Especially he could like the God King could pretty much, not the God King that's from Warbreaker, but the what is he called? The Emperor? No.
Lord Emperor.
Lord Emperor.
Lord Emperor.
He could probably
Lord Wolf.
fly. Like he could literally just make himself weightless,
Weightless.
and then just pull on like or push on whatever metal and just go forever. Like he could literally
However, though,
and then slowly increase.
think
his
about the
weight.
sacrifice Sazed has to make every time he's trying
Yeah.
to
It had
store
to
that stuff.
Be really heavy for a long time.
Every night I just
did, yeah.
Every night I'd make myself 50%
blind,
heavy.
heavy, and tired.
Well,
Yeah.
that's
I think they can store one at a time.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay.
I think they've kind of mentioned it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, but that would make some sense.
we do need. There's clearly we need to learn much more, but I love the 3-tiered system. So we have essentially 3 wholly independent magic systems, yet that are somehow based on metals.
What's the
Yeah.
third?
Hemalurgy with the internal spikes.
Oh, jeez, we really know nothing.
No, 0
About that.
Alls we
But
know
I-
is the.
Because they don't know much about it either.
But is
Yeah,
it that
no.
different from? Is it an entirely different magic system? You think, or is it just like an adaptation of the two?
Allomancy and Alchemy.
Furikami, like
It has a
we don't
different
know
name.
how. Does it? Did they say it in this book?
It's in the back of the book. So.
Oh,
Oh, it is in the back
I
of the
flipped
book.
through the back recently, but they didn't mention
No,
it.
I
in
mean
the book.
glossary.
glossary.
Yeah, glossary. They didn't really mention it. In the
Okay.
book.
Well, all I know is it has a different name, and
Huh.
it has to do with those damn spikes, and
Yeah.
that's what was making the
The Inquisitors.
the
strong, or-
Inquisitors. They have like these spikes through their head.
Yeah, we find
Yeah.
out that they have like 8 of them or
11
something, or 11.
spikes.
Originally, you just think it's the two eyes, and then you find out they have the core one in the back, but they have like 6 others or 8 others
in the
their
chest.
Yeah.
Or maybe it is an application potentially of the because it all has to do with metal, but actually even furochemy, they store that in metal.
Yeah.
They have to store it in metal. Everything has to do with metal in
Metal.
this book.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is a very. I mean, again, like you have to give it to Brandon Sanderson, who can come up with these like insane, like such unique magic, well thought out magic systems.
Magic systems,
So when we talk
yeah.
about like Warbreaker, the colors, breathing colors, Stormlight, it's like absorbing light and like these energy of Spren, like all this like such cool systems that he makes.
yeah.
The other thing is with that, I'm going to go back to the end. We're talking about the end before the beginning.
We're talking a lot about the end. we
But you know what? We always fuck up the end anyway. We
Yeah.
always fuck up the end. We never get to the end, so
Yeah.
we might as well just knock it out.
Yeah.
So
We'll get to the beginning in part 2.
Then we can split the episodes up.
yeah, exactly. I'll just release them in a different order. No, but the other thing that's crazy, and that's why I was just rereading that last piece of the book, because right before this, I wanted that scene where Vin's fighting the Lord Emperor, like right in my mind, and she finds out for some reason he can push even metals that are inside
the
of her body.
Yeah.
And she finds out she can, but the really interesting thing is he blows her earring out from her mom. That sounded really bad. No, but he blows it out of her, and
Which was one of those things that they said, like, you shouldn't. It's in your body. Like, you shouldn't be affected by any elements.
And I think that has to do with metal in your body is like somehow treated differently in some way.
Maybe.
Well,
It's like being in a kappa cloud, I think. Like they in the beginning, it's like it's impossible to tell if you're burning metals if you're in a kappa cloud.
Yeah, but then they find out
It's
Strength
strength.
and strength.
So I think it's the same thing. Like,
if
it's
it's in
just
your body-
harder if it's in your body. But if you're strong enough, you can do it. And it seems like, obviously, the Lord Emperor is, like, the
super
strongest.
strong.
Well, that's one of the things that's so amazing, too, is it's just like, oh, like, he's immortal, but, like, that, like, okay, that doesn't mean he, like, can't be killed. Well, technically that doesn't mean he can't be killed, but they're like, we don't know
But
for
just because
certain,
someone
like,
calls themselves
yeah,
immortal doesn't
exactly.
mean they are.
And they're like,
Yeah.
we can do this, and then once you like actually start to see his power, like he just backshands Kelsier, and it's just like half of his face is gone, and it's just like he gets stabbed by two things, and he just keeps walking, and it's just like soothing like 100,000 or how many thousands of people were out there, and you're just like, holy crap, this guy is strong.
Yeah.
Well, that's just a really precise application of Philokemi. For that split second, he was
Super
10
strong.
times, 100 times stronger. And so it destroyed his face.
Yeah.
He did like stop it in that 1 second time frame.
Dude,
he looked to be like a
that
god.
fucking scene. Holy shit. Not only that, you're like so crazy because Kelsier's fighting an Inquisitor.
Oh my
and
God.
like everyone's just like, I don't think a Mistborn should be able to do this. And he's like fucking next. It's
Well,
like Michael Jordan.
They describe it like there's like hundreds of these pieces just like flying around him, and he's literally like floating. He looks like he's just flying because he's pushing on everything and pulling on everything
Perfectly in balance.
perfectly, and things are just like flying around. And I love the scene where it goes back to Vin, and she's just like, everyone is like they're experts in this, and this is why he trained me in pushing and pulling.
Yeah.
He is the expert.
On
That
push and
is
pull.
his like expertise, whereas like Breeze is this amazing soother, and then it's like this guy is just like perfectly, Kelsier's just perfectly floating, moving all these things.
I liked how she said it too, like, oh, I was so long. She didn't think she
thought like Mistborn that he would be just okay at everything.
Jack of all trades,
Yeah.
master of none.
None.
Yeah.
But that was his specialty.
He is a master of the push and pull, and it's just like so cool. You know what's funny? And this is a bit of a side thing, but we didn't see really many the pulling. What are they called? Not Allomancers or Mistborn, but the
The iron.
the Mistlings. We never saw a pulling
Coin shots or
Mistling.
pushers?
Yep, but we never saw the other ones are called lurkers.
Yeah, lurkers.
But we never had a single example, I think, in the whole series of a lurker.
Yeah, we don't. Some of the gods.
But I was
might have
thinking, I'm
been
like, what would you really do as a lurker?
Oh my
Like,
god, I could think of a ton of things. I was
Yeah.
thinking about this. I actually was doing this thought experiment the other day.
Which one would be best?
Well, I was thinking about like, man, it feels like it'd be so much more awesome to push it. But then I'm like, dude, making shit come to your hand whenever you need to, pulling your body up a wall because
Yeah.
you could latch on to something. I'm like, actually, you could do a lot of the same things that you can do as a pusher,
Just the
but
opposite
you have to think differently about how you apply it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, holy cow, there's a lot you could do with that. And if
Yeah.
you had both, fuck.
Well, yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
But of course, if you have both, you have everything.
Yeah.
So,
I would also assume, technically, if you pull something hard enough, you just let it transition into a push, right?
As you move aside or
Yeah.
something. Like, pull it towards you and you move
Like,
it.
if you want to push someone that way, you just pull them really hard this way.
yeah. Well, it's all about weight, right? So
your
you find
positioning.
something, you find something heavy enough. You pull yourself just like someone else is pushing something heavy behind them.
Right.
So, like, I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what would be cooler if you had the force? You're gonna call shit to your hand more than you'll shoot
Push things
coin.
away, yeah.
So I was like, I just get a gun,
Yeah.
shoot people from far away, and then I will pull shit to me. And then I can pull myself up a wall, like
Yeah.
you know, pull. You could. Oh man, there's a lot you could do in our world.
Yeah.
With pull.
Yeah.
So I did think through that, and I'm like, they
But,
do
yeah, we don't have a
emphasize
single-
the push.
Yeah, we don't
But,
have a
yeah.
single example of a lurker in the book that we get to really hear about. But
Anyway.
it's still the push seemed to be the coin shots seem to be the bigger thing.
Well, they're great for assassination in a world
'cause-
you don't have guns.
Yeah, like it's essentially having a gun.
Yes.
But one of the things that I loved is how brilliant Vin is with the pushing. And remember when she goes in and she gets the chainmail and she breaks the chainmail up, and then she gets the stone arrowheads and puts them in there, and she just freaking shoots him at the guy, and he stops the rings, and the stone fucking like goes through all of the Inquisitors. That was such a
that's
sweet
awesome.
scene.
And then the metal powder.
Oh, so we couldn't
smoke
see.
screen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's super
Yeah,
cool.
she just came up with a bunch of ideas right at the end.
Oh my gosh, yeah. They were, well, even just like I thought like when the very first scene, not the first, like one of the first chase scenes when she's starting to get into her powers and she shoots the coin purse off.
Yeah.
And even Kelsier's like, I'm gonna save that trick. That trick's awesome. But I thought they would kind of keep relying on that. But that really only showed up like once with Kelsier and then once with when she was facing the Inquisitors with the book. She shot the book away. But I loved how at the very end they're just like, okay, she's not gonna use that same trick a third time. That'd just be too much. Let's use brand new tricks, and they were freaking awesome.
Yeah. So I'm really curious to see in the next book, like they'll be how common it'll be now.
Yeah.
Wants to use it.
Everyone knows about it.
Everyone's gonna be using the.
Well, but everyone that used it against is dead.
Yeah.
Because all the Inquisitors are dead except for Marsh. So,
but I think
But
that,
if she uses it again,
yeah.
it'll get out.
and we got to remember that just because like the Ska Rebellion happened doesn't mean that all of the noble blood is gone. I mean, that shit could show up anywhere, and probably does even more often than we think. And then the other thing is like we don't know the true outcome of the Ska Rebellion situation, right?
You know what? It's something. There was one thing I was thinking about a lot. Is like, man, you see a lot of misting. Well, not you see a lot, but you hear about quite a bit of ska mistings.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, man, you would think there'd be like tons of noble, and you don't get a ton. There are like kind of like I don't know, NPC bad guys that show up every once in a while. But one of the things I was thinking about is like, I wonder how many mistings don't ever come into their powers of nobles because they live such easy lives that they don't ever have the breaking.
And we learned that you need the breaking. To get
So
right.
it's like some of these like nobles living these like lives that are just like so posh and just normal. Like how many of them just never broke and actually have the ability latent in them?
That could be next book. A bunch of them folk doing rebellion.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's a good point.
And there'll be a
You
bunch
might
of
start
new
to see some of that.
That's a great point, and I had a weird thought when you mentioned that. And it was like, I bet if you're a noble family, you probably are trying to break your goddamn kids.
That makes some sense.
like I would think like
they probably are trying to make sure that those come out because they're so valuable.
Yeah. What was it? Kelsier had a comment in
About Ellen.
About Ellen, not like if there
He
was
got
ever a
nearly
time
assassinated.
What
it
if
would have
his
been that.
dad was just like trying to
trying to
get him to break,
Yeah.
whatever.
Like,
I mean,
that might
and
be a
there's
common thing.
There's enough houses fighting each other. There might be an instance where you could break it, but I know that if I was in a house and my house's strength depended on
Mistings and
our
Mistborns.
like ability as a family to have Allomancers, I would be trying to find ways to break.
So
Yeah,
maybe
but
there
I
are-
also think that there's, I don't know how people are in this world, but if we go by our world, I think there's also precedent to show that a lot of times, or not a lot of times, but sometimes parents won't do the hard thing that they have to do to make
To the
their
kid.
kids
Yeah,
have a
that's
better
true.
situation because they want them to have an easier life
Didn't
than
it
they
seem
had
like
or something like
Ellen's dad was an asshole?
Oh my
though?
God.
that. Yeah,
I think it's a safe bet that he tried.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like hoping his son would break because obviously Ellen probably didn't show up.
Son, look at this massive wall.
Oh my god. Dude, some of that.
I either want you dead or pushing. There's a coin down there.
Well, his father was a tin eye, so you would think that he would be like hoping. I guess I wonder if the specific allomancy is what's hereditary, or is it just the allomancy in general? So, like, do you have a kid that's a higher chance of being a tin eye, or do you have a kid that's just has a higher chance of being one of any of them?
You know, I don't know.
Because they don't talk about it, and that'd be kind of an
They
interesting
only
thing.
mention it once right at the end when the questioning Vin and saying she has a very pure bloodline.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
assuming that means, like, her strength is related to blood, like, the more pure you are, the stronger you are. Mm-hmm. But we don't really know where that bloodline came from.
Well, we only
Yeah.
know her dad.
I mean, like, originally.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's interesting that if it was a pure bloodline, that the Lord Ruler would be so offish on her dad.
Yeah, letting him just like, but granted,
Whatever.
He doesn't care. He's like, whatever.
Yeah, you got to think that after like what is
1,000
it,
years.
thousands of years, these people. He even
Was
talks.
3,000 or 1,000 or something?
I don't
1,000.
remember, like 1,000.
Okay.
But he's just like, I don't even like. I let them the nobles fight it off every few hundred years anyway, and like they get all mangled and kind of re-rise up. So he probably like after the fighting ends, he's just like, oh yeah, you know, your great grandfather helped me, so you can be the lord of your house type thing.
That's true. Yeah, his
Yeah.
perspective's that way. So.
I think he just lets them sort it out himself, and he doesn't even bother.
Yeah.
He'd be perfectly happy if they all died out, too, because then less people to oppose him. Because they actually have power.
Yeah.
Who could,
Yeah.
you know, challenge him.
So let's take a crazy detour and go to the beginning of the book, because there's some things that I absolutely love in the beginning.
We already talked
Like-
about the end, though. So
Yeah. It feels like we're done. I'm just kidding.
All right, see ya at the next book, folks. No, the beginning of the book, I realized again how much I really liked it, because I love how it starts with this like angsty in the boons noble.
Yeah.
Now we don't get in this book. It's really interesting because I feel like in future books, like Stormlight and other things, we have very detailed like country map, like origins. In this world, it's essentially an empire, but it's important not to forget that at once the empire was not a whole, and you have lords and power on the east and the west and the center and out and about, and this starts kind of in the boons, like in the center area where you've got a lot of farming lords out there. And I love the fact that Kelsier just kind of comes up, joins the field a little bit, chats around, and then he ends up just obliterating this noble family. But I don't think you get the full impact of what he's doing at that instance.
Yeah,
until
you just
later
hear like,
on.
oh, like burned down and.
But I love how it starts, because you start in the mind of the noble, which I think is just a cool.
Oh,
way.
he like looks over and he's like, "Who's this damn Scot that's like staring me down?"
Staring at me.
You get the obligator that's there, and he's trying to impress the obligator, and like, "Hey, you know, this could mean more wealth for my family, and like, I'm gonna make it big after this."
I just thought it was awesome because you get like a really good like vision into the world without having Brandon Sanderson go off and kind of explain. I thought he did well in this book, like especially when Vin's training.
Yeah,
You know, he starts to talk about each of these elements as she's like gets her chapter with each.
yeah, you get
each
it
one of the
very
people.
much, and I think it's similar to the what we get in Stormlight Archive, where you get the magic system kind of developing through the almost entirely through the viewpoint of the person who knows nothing. Literally is just like completely thrust upon him, and I think it's a really cool way to kind of start to very slowly like introduce, and you get these like little things, kind of hints at stuff, and then you start to find out more behind it and some of the reasoning. It's a cool way of going about it.
You get
and
to
like-
learn it with her.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, like, just her background was so awesome. I love the way that he developed her personality from like seriously survival mode, clearly very damaged in terms of her relationship with her
Brother.
missing or dead older brother,
Yeah.
Rin.
Reen.
Yeah, I don't know that we know.
Well, we know what happened to him.
Yeah,
I forgot
we do.
that.
Oh,
I
The
must have zoomed
The
past
Inquisitor
that part.
says
Found him.
at the very end. The Inquisitor says that like, oh, your brother even held out. Like,
Oh, yeah,
never
that's
told
right.
us. And he's like, we knew. He's like, we tortured him for like days.
They
and we
tortured
think
him, yeah.
that Reen left, but Reen really just got captured, but never gave up. Then, so the Obligators killed him. And she's
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
oh my god, like he didn't betray
betray
you.
him.
Which is one of those things that's almost a bit frustrating too. Because like I get like this puts her in that mindset of like don't trust anyone.
Yeah.
But also like the brother like that's a disservice to yourself when you're constantly telling her that like you're gonna abandon her and you're gonna leave her. And he was not a good person. He beat her, he did bad shit. But probably part
Maybe
of
he's
his
trying to break her.
Yeah. Oh yeah, maybe. Oh, I didn't even think about
Shit! Holy
Jesus.
cow!
Well, but even
dude.
then, he puts himself in such a bad position. But he actually ends up being like a really like he did care for her. He did not spill the beans.
I mean,
I
he
wonder-
cared for her in his own way.
In his own way.
Just because he didn't break under torture, which is commendable,
Yeah.
doesn't mean him.
No, it was probably the mother killing the little girl or her little sister, because she did break at some point.
No,
we know
no, I
very
mean-
young she did break.
No, I mean this. Rin.
Yeah,
he didn't
Rin.
break under torture. Like he didn't spill the beans.
Oh,
Right.
okay, yeah.
That doesn't excuse him for a lifetime of being a shitty person.
That's
like
true.
a terrible person.
Yeah.
He did one noble deed. All right,
Yeah.
that's good. And
Yeah, but why? Why, when he was so shitty all the other times, did he
Because maybe
decide
he
this
did
is the
love
time
his
to...
sister, just
Yeah.
in a weird
way.
He was
Well, I mean,
also badly abused.
If you know her background and where she comes from, and you know that most likely she's gonna live a life of people hunting her down and trying to kill her. Maybe getting
it
her
was
to
a
break
break.
and training her not to trust anybody
Was
is
better
his
than-
way of showing love to her.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing. It probably would have been more healthy to be like, hey, these fuckers are going to be chasing you
Yeah,
for the rest of
yeah.
your life. I'm going to teach you to be tougher than you've ever been before. Maybe that would have been a little bit better, but maybe that's his way.
yeah,
You know?
that is
he probably was just as hurt and twisted as she was in the beginning. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
just the life
I
he
mean,
lived.
yeah, he literally just comes home, mother's killed his youngest sister, and he just like, well, now I've got to fend for myself with the younger sister. Like,
Yeah, he probably had a lot of anger, but
Yeah.
he still, just took it out on her, but still loved her.
Yeah.
Kind of, like in
Yeah.
a weird, sick way.
that's one of those very rough kind of starts
Yeah.
for a character.
Oh,
Just
man, her
like,
character is
you feel
so
for her,
unique.
and
Yeah.
she grows. That's one of the things that's amazing, and we've said this in other books, like how well he develops characters.
Yeah.
She has such a cool and like visible development, and you get to constantly. I love how much in the beginning you're always hearing about Reed and the voice in her head, and then
Starts
as you
to
get
go away.
but it's so subtle that you just slowly start to be like, oh yeah, she just had a voice from Reen. And it's like, when's the last time we had that? That's like chapters ago.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it just like comes like again like 5 chapters later, and then there's just like one at the end, and it's just like that final like it's right before she goes to Ellen. Just like, is this like she almost has to choose? Do I keep listening? Do I not? Like,
I will say though that and this, I don't think that this is like a mistake or anything. Obviously, it's a shorter book. It's a shorter series. I mean, all 6 books of this are like one book of Stormlight, so it's not like I'm trying to compare the two. But I do say that I will say that like because of the more like book real estate that Stormlight has, I like the way that it feels more natural that the progress of behavior goes. Like Kaladin is still like racist in the middle of book 2.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it takes so
Actually,
long
I
to
think
get
he's
those
still kind of
to
half racist
exactly.
now.
Yeah, exactly. It
Which
takes so
feels like
long
8
to
books.
change those perspectives, even though you have tons of examples of it being proven wrong.
Yeah.
You know, your brain defaults to these neural pathways that it's formed. But I feel like in this book, she changes, even though there's still hints of it, that she changes rather quickly from going trust nobody to, hey, I kind of trust these guys.
I kind of like it. You know, and I think that the one way that he tried to, I don't know, mitigate that a little bit was to make these time skips in the parts.
Yeah.
But, you know, the problem with that is you don't feel it as a reader.
Yeah.
Right.
So I
Probably feel it even less in the audiobook than seeing it in the physical
like the time
book.
skip.
Yeah.
because all of a sudden it's like 3 months later, and she start doing the coin shop.
Yeah,
like,
and it's kind of like,
training.
you know what happened though? I mean, reality is this is one of his earlier publications. I'm not even sure, but it could even be the next one after Elantris. I can't remember the order. But in that sense, publishers are generally like, cut a lot of stuff out. We just need to get to the meat.
Yeah.
And so when you're doing that, he was probably like, am I going to show... like in Stormlight, he'll actually show Kaladin make every individual step in his training. In this book, he's like, time skip, she can do it now.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah,
sparring.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And she's getting better. But you do lose. You do lose that... You see it in this book, and it's done very, very... Probably as well as you can do it for a short.
Right.
Like you're saying, a shorter book. But you're right. The feeling you
It
get...
is different.
It's
you know?
different.
And he, like you said, he did the best that he could with the space that he had, and I think he did it masterfully. You know, I don't I don't think he should have done it different, but it just comparing the two, you definitely feel the difference.
Oh, yeah.
you know?
In Stormlight, that's actually one of in the reality of what you said, literally one Stormlight book is at least, if not more, than the entire trilogy of Mistborn.
It's right after it.
It is right after.
There's only a
Second
short
book.
story in between the two.
So, in my opinion, this is a huge jump even from Elantris in terms of skill. I've read Elantris as well. And already, though, like I mentioned, compared to Stormlight, where he's not only so successful that they'll let him write as many fucking words as he wants.
Yeah.
Excuse my French, that's needed there.
Yeah.
But also that he's increased his craft there.
Yeah.
So super impressive.
And he's so good that, like, the Stormlight books don't even, like, phase me. Like, I want to get this next book and just have it be this thick. You know what I mean?
No, it
like,
doesn't matter.
Like, dude, the thicker the better. Like, it always
It's
frustrates
more
me with
content.
movies when people are like, oh my gosh, it's a 3.5 hour long movie. It's like, that doesn't matter. It's, is it good or not?
Yeah.
You know?
If it's good,
if
3
it's
hours
good, I
is
hope
way
it's
better.
8 hours long.
The biggest problem is that people forget that the pacing only matters when it's dragging.
Right.
And if you're good enough to be wary of where it's dragging,
You
like
can
he
still write
seems
a
to be,
long
you
book
could write a
and-
long book and you'll never lose the
Yeah.
attention. Be like, oh, that's why sometimes we'll read these books and we're like, where's the next one? Where's the next one?
Yeah.
Where's the next one? And I'll read 3 in a row.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it didn't matter because the pacing was great.
This book,
So-
a shorter book, Stormlight, thick books, both of them, I've never stopped at a point where I'm like, I want to read more. Or I don't want to read more. You know
Oh,
what I
yeah,
mean?
this is like, this is
I
boring.
always stop and I'm just like, what's next?
Yeah.
You know? Like, when can I read
pacing
more?
is
When
good
do,
in
when do
this.
I have time to read more?
Some
of this?
authors use, and I know Brandon Sanderson uses very much, pilot readers.
Yeah.
And he pays very close attention to where they drag and fall and maybe changes the pacing depending on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool concept.
As a little side note for any writers out there, I've personally found it to be more beneficial when you're getting feedback on your writing to ask not necessarily for feedback on how to fix like certain problems. Like, don't tell me, oh, this character's not likable.
Yeah.
Just tell me this character's not likable, and that way I know if you are getting the intention or not.
Yeah.
So like, it's better to pay attention to people's reaction rather than
The
their
feedback.
perception of what is wrong.
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean?
Should be doing.
Yeah. Like, oh, what are you feeling at this moment? Oh, at this moment, I'm wondering if he's going to do this or that. And it's like, perfect. That's what I intended.
Yeah.
You know?
It's great.
Or you're just like, I really don't care. I'm just looking forward to the next character.
Yeah,
I'm looking-
exactly.
Like, okay, maybe I need to cut this or spice this
oh,
up.
yeah, I'm a little bored right here. I don't know exactly what's going on. Okay, I need to flesh this out a bit. You know, it's like that. I feel like that's more beneficial.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I do love how the book starts, and I love the growth of the character Kelsier too, because we get to start with this character who, in essence, is a little bit like our Obi-Wan. I guess I would say.
Yeah.
He's a little bit like our Obi-Wan. He's pretty badass. If only they could have done a better fight scene.
He even had the high ground at one point.
Yeah, he did.
Do you know that meme? I have the high ground, Anakin. It's over.
If only we could have seen some of that more guru-ness come out of old Obi-Wan, but I know the limitations of the the original movie. But regardless to say, I thought he was a really interesting character because although he seemed like, oh, this guy is the main character, Sanderson wasn't really shy about hiding his flaws.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about him, if Kelsier became the next, let's say he became the next Lord Emperor, he would just kill every noble, everyone, except
In the
for-
beginning, he
even
definitely
at
would
the end, he would have. He cared about one noble because he viewed Vin as his daughter.
Yeah.
And the only reason he cared about that noble was because Vin basically said that she loves him and he saw it.
Well, I think that's a common thing in a lot of. It's really weird because even people that I shouldn't say nobody, but anyway, almost everybody dislikes racism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But almost everybody will excuse it more from the people they know than the people they don't know.
Yeah.
It's like one thing said by this person I know, it doesn't hit as hard as hearing the same thing from someone you don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like sometimes intimacy with somebody will forego the visceral reaction to certain behaviors.
Yeah.
You know, somebody, or even not even racism, but just somebody saying something mean to you. If you know them and you know their intentions, it's different from just a stranger coming up and saying the same exact thing. You know what I mean? So it's like he was able to kind of put that hate of the nobles aside a little bit because he knew Vin.
Yeah.
Vin.
Yeah.
And it softened the blow of this guy's a noble a little bit, I feel like, you know?
Yep. Yeah. I think so. And I think that it also showed the moment where you knew, Kelsier kind of always knew in his plan what his outcome was going to
Although,
be.
just to correct it, I guess it's not racism. Noble's not a race.
Yeah.
Well,
Prejudice.
actually,
Prejudice. Thank you.
prejudice.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Actually, there is some.
Well, they are a different race, though. The
They
nobles
are.
are different
Are they
race
all
from the
different
Scott.
race?
That's what they don't really tell you.
So by now they're kind of accidentally blended in the 1,000 years,
Yeah.
but the reality is that the Ska was the original people of the supposed
hero
hero.
legend.
But there's also people of the same race that aren't noble, correct?
The nobles
Is
are,
it just Ska and nobles?
and
there's no common or
Terracemen
non-Skas?
is another group of people.
Oh, okay.
So but the nobles, what we don't really understand is, are they actually a different race, or just by now they're kind of different, called different people because
Yeah.
they were just Scott people that supported the right guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just
You know-
assumed that since it happened 1,000 years ago, there was multiple empires. One empire was
Was
Ska,
Ska.
and the others were not
yeah,
Ska.
maybe it's like,
Yeah.
okay, one's Britain like
And-
descendants and
yeah.
one's U.S. descendants.
And so
Yeah.
the Ska,
like, and the U.S. Britain
Yeah.
descendants.
So they
'cause
might
they're
be
colonial,
genetically
right?
similar.
Yeah.
we don't know.
it's just like us the Canadians were the
Yeah,
same.
yeah,
like,
yeah.
Ska was
Yeah,
the same. But like the Ska people oppressed the terrorist people, and then he's like, we're gonna just
Yeah, we're done
do
with
that
that.
But
for
it,
the next
yeah,
1,000 years.
Jeez.
I think one thing going back to like talking about Kelsier, one thing that his relationship with Vin is awesome, and I think him as a character, like he's such a cool character. Like from the beginning, you really want to like this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does. He's like charismatic. He's constantly smiling, and he's such a like opposite end of Vin. So they offer these like contrasts and how much their like development together.
I love how much it pisses
works.
Vin off. When he's so like off, she's like really pissed because she doesn't realize that she likes Ellen.
Yeah.
But she's like super pissed when like Kelsier isn't giving her like a certain type of attention, or is just off-putting by that, and she's super pissed at Ellen.
Yeah.
When he's not. She's like, why am I even angry about this asshole who's ignoring me reading books like he said he was going to be? Damn him.
Welcome to relationships, sweetheart.
But I was really glad when I read the book that Vin never developed feelings for Kelsier.
Kelsier, yeah.
It was
yeah.
always the big brother or fatherly figure.
Yeah.
And wasn't any weird relationship in there.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that part of that was, I'm not going to say that there wasn't a moment. There was a moment where in Vin's monologue in her head, she was like, I'm kind of irritated that he didn't like do this or that. But because of Kelsier's attitude, it almost kept it like more like the brother or father, which and Kelsier clearly saw her like the daughter
And,
of his wife.
Like he never had weird feelings.
Yeah.
Like so many authors have that in the it's like that's not right.
Yeah, he definitely kept it like. Well, you know, he was also like madly in love with his
Yeah.
wife.
Yeah.
And actually, Vin reminds him of his wife in some looks fashion.
Yeah.
So you think that could be
Yeah.
a dark way to go with it. But to him, it was always the daughter because his wife was always like, let's have kids, let's
Yeah.
have kids. And he was like, no, I'm
No.
going to be the best thief king ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, one thing that I really like too is how I felt that with Kelsier and Vin, you didn't get this. I like how subtle that they really kind of introduced how strong Vin is, because it wasn't like there was a little bit of a hint to it, like, oh, she's a bit of a natural, and like, oh, she's like getting this stuff really quick, like, but it wasn't like this. She has some dormant, latent power that's just like so insane, like that
Yeah.
kind of like hints out that like she's gonna be this like end person that does everything. Like it's a bit more subtle,
It's
where
not
it's just
flipped
like
on like
Yeah.
a switch.
yeah, like it's not just like, oh, there's something dormant and latent in her. She just like pulled on this great reserve of power that no one should have. But it's just like very subtle. Like she's just picking this stuff up faster.
Yeah.
Like it took me like I didn't even jump at first. I was too scared, and she just jumped right off. Like so she's like willing to go put herself out there, but then she's also like, she's picking this stuff up faster than I did.
Yeah, really
but it
fast.
wasn't like this like. She has this dormant, latent
Yeah.
power
Yeah.
that you're like, okay, she's gonna be the one that does this stuff.
Dude,
Yeah.
But they show it a little bit when they get in the pushing match.
Yeah.
In the street with the coin.
Oh,
And
but even
Kelsier-
she's the one who breaks the tree and is the one that like flies back. But
Well,
yeah,
Because of weight.
Yeah, wait,
But,
because I'm assuming Kelsier weighs almost 190 pounds.
probably like
She's
more than
closer
her.
to
Damn,
100.
Kelsier, go on a diet.
Well,
He's tall.
I'm supposed to be very
But
tall.
she's like malnourished, like 16 or something. Like so, she probably weighs 100 pounds.
110.
Maybe
yeah,
100
she's-
pounds.
Well, they even
Yeah.
say she doesn't have like that full figure of a woman.
Yeah.
She's still pretty young, so I bet she's very like.
She's just like, I wish I could pull right now.
And she was able to equal him for a little bit until she got pushed through the tree.
Yeah.
And like, Kelsey was just so surprised that she was able to put that much power out.
Right.
But even then, it wasn't just like oh, she blew Kelsier through a brick wall, which was impossible.
Yeah.
Like she was just like, oh man, that took me back with how strong she was.
Yeah.
And then even came afterwards. It wasn't like we immediately recognized, because when we read it, she's the one who gets pushed through the tree, and the tree breaks, and you're like, oh god, Kelsier's strong.
Yeah.
But then he's the one who's like, shit, that actually was kind of coming apart.
Same thing with the jump off the wall. It was really cool because you get Vin's monologue that whole time, and she's like terrified and this and that. And it's later Kelsier says she took me a whole day.
My master throw me off. I wouldn't do it. But that also is like not necessarily just like her strength. That's like she has her character. She's just like, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah.
I love actually all the side characters in this, because you've got Breeze.
Oh,
and you find out how good he is. Ham.
Yeah, the
naturally named Hammond. I'm the ham, the Peter Burner. I love Doc. Yeah, he's not
even a Mistborn.
No, just awesome. Let's see.
The Tenai.
And by the way, so that's a question about the genetic. Remember, Spook, his full name is something cool. It's like
Spooky McSpookface.
No,
I'm pretty sure that's
his
it.
name.
Spooky McSpookface, I believe is it.
It's long and
it was very long. And Kelsey was like, I can't pronounce that.
Yeah,
like as soon as he said it.
But I love that. And then
that's true. Like all his nephews are smokers too.
Yeah, but
he's the Tenai.
He's a Tenai.
Whereas it's Clubs, right? He's the nephew.
Smoker,
he's the nephew of Clubs, who's a smoker, but he's a Tenai.
Yeah,
Lestiborns.
Lestibornes. That's it.
One thing, did anyone else just give up on trying to understand what the hell he was saying? I was literally like, I have no clue. So I'm just like, I just read it and I'm like, okay.
That's what Vin's thinking most of the time too.
I'm wondering, did you guys actually go through and be like, okay, I have a good idea of what he's saying, or were you guys like me? I'm just like, I'm not even gonna.
Some of it I could understand. Some of it
I understood enough to.
There were sentences. Well, you couldn't even get the
easier.
context, but there were sentences where I was like, like remember the one where they were all going, like surprising because. Who was it? It was Ham or Breeze was like, I have no clue what he's saying. And then all the other members started talking in the same dialect. Yeah. And he's like, what the heck? And then it was Doxson that said something that made absolutely no sense. And they all broke up laughing. But I was reading that and I'm like, I feel like Doxson. I have no clue what any of that is.
I thought in that scene, besides Spook, just made something up to say to school with Breeze.
I think the other ones were actually talking in their, like, I can understand him and they said it in his dialect. That's how I got it. And I think it was Doxson at the end who said something that he's like, it sounded right. Like, he just made something up and they laughed.
Yeah, I thought they were all just messing with Breeze.
Yeah, but I just gave up on that.
Also, it might have been easier listening to it because of the accent.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Actually, listening helped me. That's for sure.
Because I was reading it, and I was like, it was like the wuzzing, the wasting, and the wasn't. I'm like,
that's pretty close.
What?
You didn't understand that?
Yeah, I know. It's like, I literally was just like, I don't think I'm supposed to understand this. So I just glossed it over and kept going.
How did you guys feel about...
Like, Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear.
I get it.
You basically have nothing important to say, sir. So, but or does he?
It'd be great if there were like major plot points.
I know that
dialogue. Brandon Sanderson, after all.
I was only had the one when he taught Vin.
Yeah, well, how about that when he's courting Vin?
Oh, he gives her the
and then later Ellen gives her the handkerchief too. She's like, oh, that's what that.
Well, Ellen was like, Ellen, he was like, well, where'd you get that handkerchief? He was like, well, I'm not going to be upstaged.
By that point, he's such a hilariously jealous man.
I know. He, like, every time you see, she's like, well, as she's like leaving, she looks up at the ledge and she sees him kind of like looking down on her or like and smiling or like following her. And then slowly you get, I think that relationship that they had was well done. Because sometimes I feel like, specifically going back to Jeff disagrees with me, the Wheel of Time. But I think sometimes I'm like, this felt so forced. But even though this was a very quick where she kind of starts to like, I felt natural around him. But it felt very smooth and natural. I don't think any of it felt like, I was like, it feels like they're just forcing these two together. I thought that the reactions that they had, the kind of very light banter, and even just like her interest when it felt natural when he's ignoring her, where she's like, why is he ignoring me?
Yeah.
Like, and that all kind of like helped to get her into this mindset of like, actually, I do start to feel more. It didn't feel at all rushed or unnatural. I thought it was a really good, smooth, even though there's not a ton of meat in it. There's not like, there are good small reactions, but there's never like this like huge like scenes that
it felt like a relationship that would form naturally, as opposed to the writer being like, "Oh, I need a relationship here."
Yeah, and that's just
exactly.
And it didn't feel forced,
Yeah.
and it didn't take up a ton of book time to be like, we have to flesh out this like 5 chapters of their interactions. It was just like, you got enough, and it felt natural, and I thought it was a really good way
growth
that he
strategy.
did through that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, he definitely did that right. And Vin's not a Taviran, so, you know. But
I also really quick, just because I don't know what made me think of this, but I laughed so hard during the scene where she was like following him, and then and all of a sudden he's like, "Psst, up here." And she looks up, and Kelsier's like, right above her.
because she was.
I laughed so effing hard imagining that. He's just like, it's like, oh, he's on his shit, man. He knows what he's following him too.
yeah.
dude, I that is actually really hilarious.
But she's definitely following to be like, ooh, like I'm interested in him. Like I should get information, but really also like, what's he talking about? Like,
I think also there was also a part of her that like wanted to justify her feelings. Like, is it okay for me to like him? I gotta go see if this guy's actually as good as I think he is.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas Kelsier was just like, do I need to murder this bro?
well, and I love Kelsier's.
He actually went and checked him out a few times.
Yeah, this is my 3rd time.
Because he wanted to see.
Like what was her interest in Vin, his interest in Vin.
What are your intentions with my daughter?
Yeah.
Who said that? Up here.
But it was also such a good, I thought that scene also too was, it almost did plant a little bit of that seed in doubt, because you get from her point of view, she's like, he's interested in like Scott, and like he's a good person, and then literally like you immediately get Kelsier just like, which makes perfect sense, and this could entirely be true, where he's just like, this is just nobleman. It's in fashion to talk about this stuff. Like you get this stuff all the time where it's just like, oh, his things should have been different, and he's like, he's just being unique. He's rebelling against his father, and you're like,
I think right now with social
that could
media,
be true.
that proves correct.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people are willing to talk the talk without actually putting in the sacrifice to accomplish what they talk about.
It was all about the thought experiment.
Yeah.
He wasn't about the action at that
Exactly.
point.
And
He was just
Kelsier
thinking
even pointed
and, like,
it
reading
out.
the books, and that was true. Kelsier was like,
he pointed out, he's like, he wouldn't overthrow his king. He's just talking about like treating them better, but like this is all just like idle talk for him.
Yeah.
He would never act on bringing his house and their entire power structure down around them.
he was 100% accurate.
Yes.
It was a thought experiment for him. And
Very
he
cool.
sees it, and he's actually a decent human. So he's like thinking about it, but would he? No, he wouldn't throw it.
Well, and even
he didn't want to treat the Skull bad, because the first time he slept with one and he found out what happened, he's like, I'm never doing that again. And his father makes fun of him for it later.
Oh, that's rough.
And so it shows that he does have more. It's like, it's not willing to like overthrow the world ruler.
Well, I mean, I think sometimes people in a situation like that can get caught in the idea of not necessarily that they're not willing to make the sacrifice, but is my sacrifice actually going to mean anything?
Yeah.
And when there's no certainty there, it's like, why give up everything that I have?
I mean, he's
for
in
an
a very
uncertain outcome.
comfortable spot
You know
in
what I
life.
mean?
Well, and I
So
don't
why would
think
he risk that?
his
Right.
thoughts are never about giving up everything. He's like, well, if we have enough people, we can convince the Lord Ruler.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
we can maybe make things better on our own by trying to help work with the Lord Ruler. Whereas
that's-
it's like the Scar just like,
Yeah.
this guy's a tyrant. He's
And
just
that-
got to go.
And that's their whole little group is like a bunch of kids. who
Yeah.
are like, when we get in power, it'll be better.
Yeah.
You know, and well, that could be.
And the
they
thing,
could
too,
make it better. And over time.
I think that that's actually pretty admirable, though. I think
I
that you
agree.
need, literally, to make true change, I really do believe that you need all of these different forces working at the same time. I don't necessarily think that one action is better than the other. You need people that are so freaking pissed off with the system that they're willing to risk everything to change it, like literally die and overthrow it.
Yeah.
But you also need people within the system to constantly change it, and whichever one actually gets the change done first is the most effective.
Yeah.
They might be able to enact real change, and then you can avoid all of this death and chaos that comes in the
you
wake
also
of it.
gotta think,
But
too-
if they can't get it done, you need these revolutionaries to come in and change it. You know?
But another thing too is though they're sitting there talking and they're like, Ellen's like, well, my father, it's going to be 20 years before he's out, and it's just like you think like in his mindset, it's like I could change things in 20 years, but like for a ska, that's just like. We're gonna get murdered for the next 20 years and persecuted for
Like
20 years. That for him, it's just like, oh, this is I can do good. Whereas it's like someone like Kelsier's looking, and this is like 20 years he's willing to let people die and like all this like horrible persecution.
But you also got to keep in mind, maybe 20 years they're going to let people die, but revolution also results in people dying. You know, so which one is going to result in less death?
Yeah.
You know,
don't know. And
also
actually-
it's unfair that it's very disproportionate death, whereas one results in only ska dying and the other results in everybody dying.
You know, the other
Probably
thing
still
is,
more
though,
ska.
that's why you kinda need
probably
both,
exactly because they're the less powerful.
Yeah, and if you think about the ska and what they were trying to do, let's say they fail. Well, if they fail, it's good still to have people in the throes like Ellen and his posse, because you hope that maybe they'll convert it, you know, change it, something.
Yeah. Ellen was, I think, a great. He was a good character, and I liked his character a lot because he provided that like contrast from the opposite that you expect, and some of that stuff with like even Doxson just being like, oh, all of them sleep with their like the things, and it's like, did you? And he's like, well, yes, but you find out like how much that traumatized him. So he's like,
And it was
actually,
almost
it's more
like
like
forced on him.
Well,
right?
and he said it was, and he's like, it's actually like a third of the nobles do it. It is common, but you're like Doxson, who's like every single one, and I love the scene where Doxson's like, it's not even considered cheating, and I love Ellen's response is like, you talk to any woman, that is not true. No woman will ever be okay with not consider it cheating.
I'm not going to say what it is, but there's an example of this in real life that I've heard also, where people from the outside of a culture have said this is okay within the culture, and then when I go to that culture, people within the culture are like, "Fuck no, we would have no one on that."
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly.
It might even be like, okay, it does happen more than normal, but it is
But
by
it's
no
not
means-
okay.
No one ever is like, this is totally okay.
That's one side saying something very different.
I thought that was such a not relatable, but like it was
Very realistic, understandable.
I know.
Does my wife watch these? But it's a very realistic thing that you would just be like, you hear Doxson, you're like, oh god, I know these nobles are terrible, and then you hear Ellen, you're like, oh yeah. I even like thought that for a second, be like, you know what, they probably do that
because they have the power. Why not?
exactly.
Now,
but like when you're in that position, like
And then
these
your wife's
women are
like,
not
you going out to the Skyscraper again?
But then there's also, on top of these layers of complexity, there's also the additional layer of complexity where it's like, well, maybe he just doesn't see it as much because he's not that type of person.
That's
so it's
true.
like, oh, no, nobles aren't all like that because I'm not like that. You know what I mean? So there's that additional
and
layer
it
of
is little
complexity.
cloud. We don't know. It's a cool way to think, though. So we should put a pause in this particular episode and get on to episode number 2.
We really need to make sure that we cover the beginning.
There's another thing that I was going to bring up next, which is what we'll start with, is there's another person who has very, very unique morals, and his name is Marsh. And he, in my opinion, takes a turn that I pretty much never expected through the books that we need to kind of talk about. And for sure, he also has a different moral compass than even his own brother, despite the fact that he led, for a time, the Ska Rebellion. So we'll get to that, Marsh, and more when we come back. And we don't need to worry about actually getting to the end. I'm sure we'll revisit it. Because we talked about it already. So,
cheers.
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 All we got.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode of Lit Literature. If you liked us, please check out our social media at Lit Literature 1 at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't hesitate to join in on the conversation. We appreciate the conversation, the questions, book recommendations, anything of that sort. Join in right on the social media websites. And don't forget to check us out at our website, litliterature.com, and our upcoming projects, though there aren't many now besides Lit Literature, you can find at lyket.net, Lyket. We do have a Patreon account, but if you truly want to support us, please like and share. Cheers.